You just tell me when you start.
Mm-hmm.
Should we just close the door?
Mm-hmm. We are okay? Ethan? Yes. Okay, welcome everybody. We are here now on the fourth week of our online course. So we welcome our students all around the world. And we are here also with people in Tamera who came for either course introduction to community course or a thinking school course or people who live in Tamera. So again, we bring together these two worlds. And already just some minutes ago, some people asked me, so what is this online course and who created it? So I want to thank Martin also for having the idea for this online course. And this online course has the title Healing of Love, Terra Nova, Global Revolution and the Healing of Love. And it's a seven-week course that we created to support people who were in Tamera and wanted to continue studying, or people who wanted to come to Tamera and couldn't this time, and wanted to dive deeper into the main thoughts of the project, so to make it accessible for them. And we have now in this course 120 students, and it's really beautiful and active and interesting. And I'm very grateful to be part of this learning endeavor. It's so great to be part of it. Yeah. And this week, the topic of our lesson was a plan of the healing biotopes. And I wanted, before I read the questions from the students, I wanted to ask Martin. Actually, it's interesting because usually Martin was a interviewer and the moderator of the course. He was sitting in this chair. And now we put him in the chair of the speaker. And I want also to give thanks for Martin's work and to also introduce him as what he is doing actually in Tamera. So Martin is the head of the IGP, the Institute for Global Peace Work. He arrived to Tamera 10 years ago, and he is a very engaged networker, bringing together thinkers and influential people to manifest this plan of the healing biotope. And before I start with the questions, I want actually to ask you about this plan. So we're diving into this matter of this plan of the healing biotope that says or claims that only few people, that small groups, that just few healing biotopes can make a global system change from a system of war and violence to a system of peace. And this is kind of a radical statement. And how can we really believe that just so few people, a few amount of people can make such a change? What makes you believe this?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and also thank you, Shamba, for all your work for this course. Yeah. And thank you for the question. I think it's a key question that, I mean, in a way, everybody who really studies this plan or confronts him or herself with this claim that, I mean, it's quite a strong one to say that it is possible to create a global healing, or that it is possible to end war in a short time, within few decades, given the current situation on this planet. And I mean, in a way, the key to opening a possible answer it is only possible through shifting from the conventional paradigm of political thinking that we have to a completely different one, which is one that is based in another worldview. It is a total paradigm shift where on a normal level we think if we want to have the biggest impact on the world, we need to mobilize the biggest amount of energy. We need for a big political change, we need to mobilize the biggest masses of people. And now there is another, and this is a kind of mechanical form of thinking. This is this convention. This is this normal form of cause and effect thinking, and it's also. I mean, it is also good to work in this framework. And still, when looking at the question, how can we end war on this planet, it is kind of clear that the task is so existential for our future, and at the same time there is no answer within this frame. And so what the political theory claims, or the political theory of the Healing Biotypes plan, is that you can change, that it is possible to have an impact on the whole life system of the planet, the whole planetary system, by a change in its smallest part. And this is a holographic thinking, we can say. This is a thinking which is different from this kind of linear materialistic thinking. And the holographic thinking says that the whole is in the part, and that the part is the whole. So whatever, and there was a quantum physicist, David Bohm, who went deep into this understanding of how the wholeness is related to the part. And he said, if you have 20 people sitting in a room, you have all issues of humanity gathered right there. This is humanity. And so if you manage to create coherence in this circle, coherence meaning that there is no trace of mistrust in this circle anymore, then you turn the world upside down, because then you work on the underlying stuff which has its reverberations and kind of the conflict that has its outer impacts all over. And the power to do that is in a way the same power that brings a seedling to break through the layer of asphalt. It is there is a power of life that is, I mean, that we have called miraculous, because there is no other form of explanation. But there are again and again these stories of and experiences of healing and salvation in absolutely hopeless situations. And what we are trying to do is to take this out of a miracle sphere and to put it into a political concept where we say we tap into this healing potential by connecting with a power that is greater than the power of violence. And I think it is important for all peace workers, especially as crazy as the world gets right now, to know that this power exists and how we can access it. Yeah, maybe this as a beginning.
Yeah.
But the answer is always the same. It is the resonance with a greater power. It is not from our own power. We are not megalomanian, but we are. It's actually a modest task. It's a matter of surrender. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. And I continue with a question that is very much connected. Tali from Israel, she asks, how can we deal better with despair? The more I'm aware to what is happening on earth, the poverty, the occupation, violence, etc., the more I get despaired. This is understandable, huh?
Yeah, I think it's a voice for many people right now. And I mean, first of all, I actually want to say that I think it's like there is such a distraction also and denial, because we are all living on this planet, and 7 billion people kind of get the waves of what is happening right now, and many people also just distract themselves or numb themselves, and so the fact that you feel despair is actually also a sign of the openness of your heart to the situation. So in a way, this is like, actually that's the first thing I want to say. So thank you for this openness to everybody who allows this to feel this pain. And then I think it really needs, I mean, like in a way, what we are victims or we are revolutionaries. You know, either we face the situation and we see what is going on and we face it every day, and there is a level where it gets worse and worse, or we say, no, I will dedicate my life to service for a future worth living, to a humane life, no matter how you want to call it. And I think this is an opening that that also connects you with answers. I mean, this is a guiding sentence. It's from Sabine Lichtenfels, The Sources of Love and Peace, where she says, once you have really seen the pain of the world with an open heart, you will go out until you have found the answers that you need to respond to the situation, that will guide you on your way. And I think this is deeply true. And then we will realize that we need to work on a perspective. It is not enough to, I mean, it is good to go to crisis areas and to do help, but at the end you realize we need to engage in the creation of a whole new perspective. And for me, I mean, realizing that, for me, the realization of actually this Healing Biotopes plan, it was a big shift of realizing that there is another way. There is not just this apocalyptic downfall, but there is another vision of another possibility on this planet right now. And maybe it's different for every person, but I think whatever access there is to find a connection to a healing power, to a positive vision. And if the existing system tells us that there is no alternative, we can always know that it is a lie. There is never just this one way where you go down the drain with the system. It is the death of a certain way of life. It is not the end of humanity. And the more people there are who see this vision of another possibility, the more a field will be strengthened for a new direction.
Yeah, I continue.
Yeah.
Another question from Tali, and she asks, how can we deal better with gaps between perceptions? For example, I do not believe in borders. I believe all human beings are equal. I believe we belong to Earth and not the opposite. But I encounter every day racism, fascism, etc. And many times I get confused. And I do not know what to do and how to react. So, how to deal with this gap between what... It's also connected to this field maybe that you started to speak about before.
Yeah.
What it is to connect to such a field when you are, a person living in Israel and facing all the system of occupation that is around.
I mean, I think there is a gap between longing and reality. And this is in a way the pain of every activist, of every revolutionary. I mean, whenever you really put out this kind of goal, there is this tension, and it's, in a way, it is like for somebody dealing with this, it's almost not a matter of, like it's very normal, I would say. And at the same time, in order to stand it on a long term, I mean, you need to strengthen the side of vision. You know, you can only, if I have to face the same situation of of a horrible situation, racism, fascism every day, then either this trickles down into my soul as a growing sense of stagnation, resignation, all of this, or I nurture a vision for another possibility, and this this we feel in ourselves. What side has more power? And this morning I spoke here about this. I tried to give like an overview of the evolutionary, of the bigger picture of what is happening right now. And I think it is, even if there is not a direct practical application of this, I think it is important to see, what kind of transformation we are going through, and that the vision of a world where there is no racism and where there is no fascism, that this vision is not just a pipe dream. And so this is something to work on, to constantly do vision work. And I think it's absolutely essential for people who live in this kind of urgency to come together. It is so much more powerful to engage in this kind of work together. And this is really also our intention, and we hope also that this online course and the network building we can contribute to it, that in more and more places groups arise of people that are in this, that share the spirit, that share this common aspiration for a future without war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. The next question is from Diana from Germany, and she has a question with storytelling. So she shares a story that she heard some years ago it's a story about Native American, a grandfather and a grandchild. And grandfather tells a grandchild about the two wolves that live in the heart. And one wolf brings hatred and troubles and hopelessness, can stand for this system of war. And the other wolf is bringing joy and happiness and peace. And the story says that they both are in the heart and they fight each other. Mm-hmm. And then the grandchild gets curious and says, yeah, but this kind of fighting wolves, and who will win in the end? And the grandfather says, the one that you will feed. Mm-hmm. So she had a question and saying, if we are always talking and focusing on these pictures of war, following the latest news, and keeping on highlighting the pain of the world, do we then feed the bad wolf?
There is definitely, yes and no, I would say. I would like to differentiate here. There is definitely a part, and I also know it myself as a politically conscious human being that kind of follows the news, that there is a track, an emotional temptation, I would say, to let myself be drawn in to the negativity of the current situation, and where it also engages my emotional body to be angry about this or that, or also to be to stimulate this feeling of pain. It is also sometimes a certain sense of comfort to kind of lift it from a personal level to a political one, that you can say it's actually the world situation, not the question I right now carry in my heart. So there is a lot of tricky traps there where I can definitely say yes, and where in general, I think yes, totally. Our task is as peace workers, or here our task is really to nurture with all we can, to nurture the vision of a global healing possibility. So in a way that, like, if you want to work with this image of the caterpillar to envision and to thereby strengthen the possibility of a butterfly. And at the same time, the system of war is a reality. And I think it is also important that not to be naive and to be in touch with what is happening. And I think also as a peace worker, it is important to understand what is going on. Like, I find it important to understand what fascism is. I think it is. I think if we just say, I don't want to hear about it, and I just will focus on the positive news, the positivity might also be shallow if we do not dare to really look into this shadow side but to look into the shadow side with the intention to really understand and not to get emotionally entangled. And I think this really requires also this, in a way, this point where I'm connected with enough positive power or with enough of the sacred matrix in myself that I can look there without identifying. Because in the end, this is our own stuff that is suppressed in some cellar, and we need to take it out of it to make our lives whole again. So we are not here to create a peace culture that is again based on a dualism where we adore some positivity and reject what is suppressed as negativity. And I think also that as a last point to this question, that the question with the news is also, does it awaken compassion in your heart, or does it just leave you in a state of fear and shock? And if it awakens compassion, then watch the news. Compassion is a guideline. It's a guidance towards peace.
Thank you. So another, it's great questions from our students who are really engaged and they want to know. So another question from Jana from Germany, who asks, why has this patriarchal time, the time of fear, mistrust and war, arrived? Why did we fall out of love, trust and matriarchal time? And what's the benefit of patriarchal time, if there is any?
That's a very good question, and of course, it's one that many people will ask. And I don't think I can give a real full answer to it. I can give some thoughts, some ideas that I made up in my own life, and I don't think that there is an objective answer to this question. And I again connect it to this kind of evolutionary view, where I think that this whole development of the patriarchal time that was also connected with this notion of an own power that the human being took, also to turn against nature, and that then kind of went off in a direction of power over and of control and exploitation and taking without asking and all of this, killing the enemy, power through war. I think in the core of it there is something which is not just wrong. I don't believe that the whole patriarchal time was just a mistake of history. But it is as if the patriarchal era is in a way, it's a time dominated by immature men, you can say. And that a big part of it has also to do with the evolution of an individual human being that is not simply part of nature, like it was maybe with the tribal communities that were really embedded almost in a collective consciousness, one with nature, but where humanity is on a path to become a counterpart to nature, not in the sense of hostility, but in a way of a creative complementation. And I think patriarchy, like the impulse in this direction I think it came from this point. It was an evolutionary impulse that was not mature enough and span off in a violent direction. And then how it all developed, like how it suddenly then became so violent, and why it went off so far in a direction that then led all the way to the Holocaust and to the nuclear bomb and all of this. I mean, there are many different parts of it, and I think it is. I think we can study it in our own lives also. This dynamic between the relation that is not yet reconciled between the masculine and the feminine energies. And this is maybe once this trauma between these two poles is fully healed, we might get a memory of why we brought ourselves into the situation in the first place. But all else would be speculation.
Thank you.
No.
And I continue with another question by Jana, who says, I truly believe in the sacred matrix. So, is a wartime maybe also part of the sacred matrix? Or is it its counterpart? Do we then think in good and bad?
Yeah, it's very tricky with language and judgments.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe before you answer, maybe you say also for people here, and in few words, actually, what is a sacred matrix? What would it mean to believe? And I truly believe in the sacred matrix. What kind of life? I don't know if I would say something like this, it will need a whole change in my life to really stand behind it.
Yeah.
So maybe you say.
I mean, as we see it, the sacred matrix, and again, I mean, this is the word that kind of we have chosen for it, or Dieter Doom kind of coined for a pattern of life, a pattern of the universe, a self-organizing pattern, effective in evolution, leading that is always directed towards healing, regeneration, cooperation, and trust. So this is the pattern that when that life naturally follows when it is freed of when there is no damage or trauma being inflicted upon it. Life naturally develops in this direction. This is the idea of the sacred matrix. And I think we can clearly see it. I mean, in our cultural history, that humanity has stepped out of this pattern, has created systems that are based on separation from this very source of life. And I think this whole judgment already of good and evil, this whole dualism, this is already something that has developed from a separation from this pattern. I mean, in the sacred matrix, there might be light and dark, but there is not good and evil. There is, I think, an important part of the sacred matrix is the understanding that in order to create peace, it is not to switch off some evil force, but it is the integration of all powers and its right balance and relation with one another. And in this pattern, I do not see war, no. But it doesn't mean that war is evil.
Yeah, thank you. So, we continue with Rafa from Spain, and he asks, I have the impression that the Healing Biotop plan points to a vision of small self-sufficient communities whose population ranges in the hundreds. In such a community, we can imagine decentralization, decentralized energy production, a form of direct democracy, self-regulating filters for citizenship, and lots of other characteristics. But how would these characteristics scale to agglomerates of thousands, perhaps millions of people? Or in other words, doesn't the Healing Biotopes plan contain a vision or perhaps a nostalgia of an Earth that is much less populated and where human activity consumes much less energy?
I mean, our idea is not to create another mega system. Like, it's not to take like a system of a community of some 100 people and to pump it up to the size of New York City. But the idea is that the world, that we will have a post-capitalistic world society that consists of small-scale decentralized communities. And I know this is really, I mean, this seems so far-fetched from the current reality, but I mean, you can call it healing biotope or you can call it different. But I believe that it is a vision for every village and even for every neighborhood in a city to consist of a community where there is trust and solidarity between all the participants involved. This is a vision of humanity which we have not invented, which has come up at all times throughout this whole patriarchal history. This is the big nondum. This is how Ernst Bloch called it, the big not yet of history, of a vision of humanity, and it is this is the picture for a radical decentralization of this world. And I think the problem there is not with the self-sufficiency and the direct democracy and the economic system. I think this is, I mean, of course the transition would be tremendous, but I can see cities that consist of a lot of communities. They would of course live very close together, and that develop a form of sharing. It would be exciting to be in a climate of anonymity, where at the same time you know that every human being I meet is embedded in a community. I mean, imagine this. And but the issue really is, do we create the issue is not with, we have forms of urban agriculture, energy production, forms of economic sharing, but the question is, can we see the creation of communities in the core, where this spreads as a new way of life, where people will no longer be so isolated and atomized, but live together in shared transparency, in trust, where really every human being has a home again, where there is cities where there can be no criminality because people are simply living transparently. And this we have, I mean, we have to go very much forward in our own lives to be able to see this kind of vision. But, I mean, there was this Theodor Herzl, the founder of the Zionist movement, who said, if you will it, it is no fairy tale. So, it's up to us.
So with this answer, you already, I feel, answered a bit the questions from Siri from the Netherlands, and nevertheless, I will read it and you see if you have something to add. Yeah? So he asks, a bit controversially, the term large-scale implementation plan that was mentioned to be needed gives me a little bit of creeps. In every part of the world, people will find other ways to live harmonious lives, but perhaps not in accordance to the Healing Biotopes plan. So how do you see this?
Yeah. I mean, it's very understandable because there are so many large-scale implementation plans and Marshall plans and whatnot that, like, it's always this kind of top-down thing of an imposing an idea. I mean, we really had enough of religious mission and ideological brainwashing. But the very idea of or attempt with healing biotopes, in a way, is a different one. Is one that that is. I mean, it's now a repetition for the thinking school because I spoke exactly about this afternoon. But it's not the idea to create like a fixed template that you copy and then you create many like the Starbucks coffee that is everywhere the same. But the idea really is to come to the core of what are universal, globally generalizable key points that of core issues for a new global era that will be the same in India as they are in Hawaii, as they are in South America and in Europe, and kind of referring to the core of human existence, and in a way this is a part of conceiving this this dream of a new era and to translate it into the DNA of a new culture. And there, of course, there are a lot of fears if we go in this direction of how to make something. I mean, it's almost like speaking about a new world government. I mean, I know the creep comes very quickly, but I must also be in a way strict, because if we always say we don't want this and we just want decentralization and small groups and everybody can bring their opinion, we also escape from an issue which is in a way the issue which where we leave the field to the Council on Foreign Relations and all these global military and political think tanks that make world politics in a very effective manner. And the peace movement needs, or the whatever you call it, the movement for a free earth, the one for a humane future, we need a common platform where we dare to establish enough trust and truth between one another to come to this core where we can say, and in the face of this plan of a new world order and of fascism arising all over the world, we dare to confront this with a global alternative and with a planetary constitution for a world without war.
Thank you. Maybe before we continue, I feel it's never too much to repeat also these kind of thoughts, because it takes time until it lands in the soul. Yeah. And maybe you want to name these key areas that you say that it's the same in every place, in every continent.
Yeah.
Like also,
I
can mention another question from Siri. She asked if who has been involved in developing this plan, and have people from all continents and variety of culture and backgrounds been included in the process of developing this plan? So, yeah.
Okay. Then on two things. Maybe I just start.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is really that I think one part that is kind of universal is the aspect of decentralization. It's the shift from centralized systems of power to decentralized autonomous systems. And and to this belongs cooperation with the powers of nature, like trying to find a way that is no longer an exploitative relation with nature, not only a sustainable development where we kind of do only so little harm that also future generations can still have something, but that humanity develops forms of life that work in alignment with the principles and workings of nature. And then connected to this is the aspect of community. I think this is this shift from an isolated or from a structure of fear to one of trust. This is universal, and and the creation of communities where this kind of trust is possible again. And this is, I think this is really something that we also find right now all over the world, in a massive longing on one side for creating intentional communities, and in so many attempts. And then I see really that there is something like a way where what we spoke before already, that the masculine and the feminine part of life, and we don't need to speak about men and women, but these two parts of life, that the historic trauma that arose in this relation, that this is resolved. Yeah, and like these are core parts, I think, and I mean there would be more to mention. I mean, I think that leaving the oil industry and creating systems of zero carbon energy supply, it will also be a part of this new planetary constitution if we were to write it, or. Or for one more, I think is important, which is a new way of dealing with hostility, a new form of overcoming conflict, which eradicates which transforms the system of solving conflict through the eradication of the enemy, transforming impulses of revenge into cooperation. I think these could be core pieces that, and this already leads me to the next question, because this is something like, I want to tell maybe just about this. There is a peace community in Colombia that we have been cooperating for many years now, San Jose de Apartado, which is a community that couldn't come from a more different angle than Tamara. Tamara was created by people from society, academics who dropped out of society. In a way, it's also a part of the privilege that we can even create this community here. And in Colombia, it is a community of farmers who were so persecuted and at the same time not at all protected from paramilitaries by the state, that the only way of surviving they saw in creating a peace community in the middle of this war. And we got to know about them, we started to work with them, and the more we collaborated with them, we saw that even though we both come from two very different parts of the world, in the core we are walking towards the same dream. And so the plan of the healing biotopes, I don't think it was developed by us. Dieter Doom wrote it down. But it was shaped and confirmed by the experience of a growing planetary network of creating relations, like with this community in Colombia, are also seeing now in what is happening in the north of Syria with the Rojava community. Of suddenly there is a stateless zone where there are autonomous communities with different ethnicities living together in quite a non-violent way, decentralized systems. So you see there is a planetary emergence where almost intuitively in many places people follow towards the same dream. And what we want to do now is to take this intuitive emergence and combine it with a power that so far has mostly served war, but which can also serve peace, which is conscious strategizing.
Cool. So, I continue. I think maybe it will be the last.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always talk so long. I don't realize it.
It's great. It's deep answers, and I give thanks already. And we will see. I go to the next question of Durel from the USA. And he asks, in August 2014, much bad news was coming from Iraq and Syria. 5,000 Yazidi men from Sinjar were massacred by ISIS. I woke up one morning with strange words in my head. The words were, I am an inverted mountain of murder, and I am frowning. My strange question is this one. I understand and believe that new information can assist in creating morphogenetic fields of peace for the birth and rebirth of Terra Nova. Can these types of fields speak to us in any way? Is it possible that the message I received in my sleep was a message from a morphogenetic field of war? And if so, what does it mean, and how should I respond?
Yeah, what a touching story, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it's in a way heartbreaking when you connect with what this voice is saying. And on the other side, I would also say it's something so beautiful, because it is. I mean, I wouldn't now want to define whether it was the morphogenetic field of war that was speaking through him, or maybe the collective spirit of the Yazidi people, or simply the voice of compassion. But I mean, it is such a sign for this sense of oneness, and I think that there is really a hand knocking on the door right now, especially on the door of this part of the world that is still privileged enough to kind of watch all of this, what is happening, and to do something about it, which the Yazidi people could not do anymore. And so this knocking on the door. It is the voice of compassion. It is the voice of the reality of life that wants to be witnessed, at least wants to be witnessed, and that wants an answer. If you think of the world as a holistic system where the kind of the health and the sustainability of this life system depends on feedback, that one organ can tell the other, this is how I am, and asks for support, then it is in a way logical that we receive such messages and that we act upon it. And I think the question, how should I
stop you? What would it mean to act upon it?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it, because you also asked, like, how should I respond? And I wouldn't want to say now, I don't know, create a campaign for the Yazidi people, or create a healing biotope or whatever. I think there is a calling that. I mean, I said before this quote by Sabine about following the calling of compassion, and I think this is really true. I think there is a voice coming. We are being called right now in this time to get active and not just to stay in our pockets. And I think if we are ready enough and open to really listen to this voice deeply, we will be guided to the place. And I think that the indications for whether we are on this path or not, it is always a growing sense of empathy and an open heart. And maybe it is that to do something on behalf of the Yazidi people. And maybe it is also something completely different. Maybe you suddenly realize I have to stop this kind of habit in my love relationship to perpetuate a war structure. But I think you will find it out, and I would be curious also how the story continues.
And if you would get in your dream such a sentence that I am an inverted mountain of murder and I am frowning, how would you interpret it? I feel there is also a fear around getting such a message.
I mean, this is quite strong. And now, when I hear it again, I'm also thinking actually of this story of this Spanish doctor, José Monteagudo, who was an activist at the time of the Yugoslavia war, and he wrote this deeply moving article where he said, I too carry a Yugoslavian war within me. I too carry this war criminal in me. It is not just outside, the murder and the killing and those that we see as the most evil out in the world. It is also, if I'm totally honest to myself, I can also track this person within me. And this doesn't mean that I load all the guilt of the world on my shoulders that are anyway burdened already. But it means, in a way, it can even be the other way around, that this is a sign of my connectedness to the world. And through me carrying this inside, there is a possibility for me to contribute to the healing, for this war structure to be redeemed. So I would not take it so personal that it's now about me, that I am this bad person, but that we are all connected with what is happening on this planet, with the beauty, with the love, but also with this kind of side. And it's obvious that the system of war asks, where are the people that are open enough to be channels for transformation?
You have power for a last question?
Yes.
Okay, so Wim from the Netherlands asks, he quotes from the chapter, Can we put an end to war? It's written that we need the healing of water, for example, but this can only be sustained by people who have internal capacity to create community. Can you more specifically explain what internal capacity to create community means in this case? And maybe I said that I wanted to end also with this question because it's also a connection to the next lesson that will be sent tomorrow on the topic healing love and healing water. So, we can heal, yes, okay, we can heal water, but...
Yeah. I mean, we have desertification in nature, and we have desertification in the social structure, to speak in an image. And if people cannot trust each other, and suddenly from the situation of water scarcity, you suddenly have a spring with a lot of water, it is very easily possible that this is not the reason for joy among people, but the cause for new conflict and struggle around who has the right to take what. And there are many stories I know from ecological projects, permaculture projects, that are very, initiated and carried out by such a beautiful dedication to a peaceful world. And still, if we can have the most beautiful ecology, the most beautiful technological innovations and inventions, if we do not create trust between people, if we are not able to deal with the conflicts that kind of roam in the subterranean darkness of human relationships, then we cannot speak of real sustainability, because we always have this barrel of explosive in the underground that can explode. and the more it is suppressed, the more it tends to explode at the most irrational kind of causes. And so I think what is meant by this sentence is that, and this is also, again, I mean, this is also an idea of healing biotopes, to combine the ecological work on sustainability with the work on social sustainability. And still, I also want to say that this is not a dogma. If your heart is full with the idea of restoring nature and not at all with the idea of community, then better go and restore nature and don't bother about community. I think it is also something that develops, and that should never be seen as a dogmatic law. So it's not that a permaculture project is wrong simply because people do not do forum.
But I know a bit Wim, I know he is in this vision to create an eco-village. So how do you develop this inner capacity to create community?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, this is what the whole online course is about. I mean, yeah, I think it starts with a common issue. It starts, first of all, with the common intention to actually create a community. I mean, there has to be a vision for a community to create a community. Sounds logical. Often not enough regarded. That how important it is for a community to thrive, that it has really a common goal, and that even if people have agreed on a common goal, that space is created to nurture this vision continuously as one goes. So I think this is really important, and this is also this, what we say, geistig work, mental, spiritual work together towards this vision. And I think then, as another essential point, it's really this what is the vessel in a community to create transparency? There can be different methods, but as people live together, they see a lot, they face a lot, they have interaction, and it is just I think it's just a very helpful part of building community, that the social energies are kept vital by keeping them transparent. And there is much more to be said about it, but I think these are two like essentials that I see that are really important. Yeah.
Wow, a very rich hour we had together. I want to give thanks for the students who in the last week started to give us feedback already for the course. And also especially for the webinars, it's great also to know how these kind of answers land in the soul, where it resonates. So it's also an invitation to write us back when we answered your question, if it was meaningful or insightful. Yeah, and thank you everybody for being here with us. Yeah, this is it for now. Thank you, Martin.